sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
After a very promising start to this season, could it be already done for KC's wide receiver, Rashee Rice, attempting to make a tackle after Patrick Mahomes threw an interception?
We're used to teams saying, we don't know, MRI. Here, Andy Reid's being a little more honest. He's leaving hope alive, but I think they already know, which is really, really too bad.
The Early Line, only on
Welcome into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson hanging out with you on this Friday, and plenty for us to get into. It's been an exciting week in the sports world across the board in all professional sports. But before we dive into this Friday night slate, I know it's probably not going to be the most exciting subject to touch on. But let's just quickly, very quickly, recap on some of the Thursday night football action. If you guys missed it, myself, Dave Sherpin, Tom Vecchio, and Adam Kaufman do the Pro Football Today pre-game show where we get you prepared for the Thursday night football and Monday night football and all of the goodies in between. And then you got the in-game live crew. But what we saw yesterday was the Broncos pull off another W, 33-10 versus a very banged-up Saints team. Why do I even care to bring up this game after what we saw last night? Well, for one, we have a number of analysts, guests, hosts here on SportsGrid that have the Broncos going over 5.5 wins, and it's something they were adamant about before the NFL season even got started. So that's one. Number two is because, well, Saints were already banged up. There was already a number of second-string and third-string guys in the mix, but it got worse last night. They lost members of their offensive line. They lost members of their secondary, including Lattimore going to the tent during the game. Then there was a brutal injury where they had to bring out the air cast. So a number of fallen players for the Saints, and the bad luck just kind of continues to stroll. So a number of MRIs had to be done today and tomorrow, which means the extensive injury report that already will continue to be for the Saints. So 33-10, they fall short to the Broncos. Decent performance by Bo Nix there. Still kind of struggled to make some connections, but showed some glimmers of hope. A big game for Javonte Williams, not only on the ground, but also in the air. 88 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. And then not sitting too far off when it came to air, 23 yards for 3 receptions. So not too bad there. I only bring him up also because he's probably somebody to continue to keep an eye on. Tom Vecchio has mentioned this. He's all in when it comes to Williams. So when you're looking at props and stuff or just ways to bet on the Broncos, I don't know, continue to take a look at Williams. I combined his rush and receiving yards last night, and things checked out for me in that category. Once again, just looking for updates when it comes to the Saints and where they're going to lie with their injuries and who they're going to have to pull up to help them out get through this season. Coming down the stretch here, though, they got the Chargers, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Browns, the Rams, Giants, Commanders. So they've got a pretty hefty stretch ahead, especially if they're not going to be able to get healthy anytime soon. They should have a little extra time to catch some rest. As for the Broncos side, as they continue to try to stack some W's in that column, they got the Panthers coming up next. They got the Ravens, which will obviously be in challenge. They have the Chiefs, the Falcons, the Raiders. So you're not looking at too many wins in some of these matchups because, again, Nick still needs to get his footing underneath him. Doesn't look bad, but still looks like he's trying to get his footing in the NFL. So that was last night's tango when it comes to NFL and that Thursday night football matchup. As for this Friday slate, we got a loaded deck on this Friday. We've got college football. We've got a massive Game 4 for WNBA. We have got a 3 slate hockey games on the deck and so much more. So where do we start? Well, the one professional team I didn't mention, probably the most important one at this moment. I know, MLB. We've got the Yankees and the Guardians going down at around the 8 o'clock hour tonight, but about an hour ago, there was some action by the Mets. Now, I know I work with a lot of Mets fans. I work with a few Yankees fans, and I know that all New York fans are feeling a lot of pressure right now. The good news is that midway through the third inning, you've got the Mets on top of the Dodgers 3-1. So I should probably have some pretty happy coworkers, hopefully down the stretch here. I don't want to jinx anything, though. Things sounded good the other night, and then things went pretty wild. You always hear the name Francisco Lindor in terms of being a rally guy for his team right now, sitting with a run and a hit, and a couple other guys contributing. Pete Alonso with a home run in this matchup as well. And then no home runs when it comes to the Dodgers, but a hit for Shohei Ohtani, which we're not surprised by that. So plenty of game ahead here as we continue to keep you covered on what's going on with the Mets versus the Dodgers. And look, neither of these guys are my team, but happy workplace, happy work life. Let's go Mets. Let's see what can happen with this matchup. Taking it back to the Yankees versus Guardians game, we've got that game coming up a little further down the stretch here. We're going to have a couple of our SportsGrid expertise come on and chat with the live lines that they want to look at during the game, and some odds and angles they're going to be looking at ahead of the game. But for the most part, just to kind of gauge what they've previously done in the series. In Game 3, with a chance to go up 3-0, the Yankees had a lead of 1-0, then fell behind 3-1 before taking a 5-3 lead into the bottom of the ninth. This was a game that I was just hearing all kinds of emotions going on for. Yankees are looking to turn the ball over to Gill in Game 4 and see what he can produce. 15-7 and an ERA of 3.5. So we'll see what goes down and shakes off with the Yankees versus the Guardians coming up around the 8:08 hour Eastern time tonight. Now, pivoting over from the important MLB news, we've got college football. We've got a lot of college football tonight, actually. So I'm not going to have my own personal opinion on it. I'm not going to be biased about this because I emotionally turned myself off from the Florida State Seminoles in the beginning of the season just to protect my mental health. With that said, Seminoles come into this contest with a perfect 22-0 record versus Duke in school history. They will need a massive effort, though, to make sure that they can keep that clean record working in their favor, because something that's not so appealing about a Seminoles team that was the perfect team just a season ago, but yes, that proves to you that a lot can change in a year. 126th ranked total offense for the Florida State Seminoles. Injuries haven't been on their side. Losing their QB1 hasn't been on their side. Losing guys on their defense hasn't been on their side. So a lot of things there. You got a number of linebackers. I mean, Lundy went down. Williams for the running back group. Lucas for the running back group. These guys are quoted as out versus this matchup. Now, when it comes to Duke and the Blue Devils, the perfect season for them ended last Saturday, 24-14 in a conference loss to Georgia Tech on the road. So they're going to have a chip on their shoulder and a big rally against the Florida State Seminoles, who tried to recorrect or at least get a 1 in that 22-0 record breaking for the Florida State Seminoles. The injury list much shorter on there, and just 2 guys and not anyone declared out per se. You've got Moore, who's questionable, and actually you've got Hasely that is going to be out, their tight end. As for another matchup, you got Oregon versus Purdue. The Ducks held their own versus Ohio State. They also handed Ohio State their first loss of the season. Now, this game was so exciting. Went back and forth, toe-to-toe, just continuing to trigger off these points back and forth. But Oregon paced Heisman Trophy potential candidate is sitting there at over 1,700 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. I'm not going to lie. I did not have much hope in what Oregon was going to do this season through week 3 because they were playing teams that weren't ranked. They were letting these teams come back into crazy games. And then most importantly, they didn't have much control. Defense was just kind of letting up a little too much. At this point, defense is starting to get more under control, only allowing 19.3 points, sitting 30th, and then 297.3 total yards per game. So nothing too bad. Then you got Purdue, who's actually shown that they can compete. They bounced back from a 27-3 halftime deficiency versus Illinois, but they fell short when they tried to go for the 2-point conversion and were unable to stack that win. So this is a team that if Oregon doesn't show up for 4 quarters or at least 3.5, my goodness, Purdue can make them pay for it. They can sneak in there and have themselves some sort of a game and some sort of a matchup. I mentioned that the Liberty and the Lynx now pivoting over to WNBA. We had WNBA today here on SportsGrid from 2 to 2:30. We talked with Coach James Young. He'll be back on with us on Game Time Decisions to run you through Game 4. Bottom line is this is an elimination game. So Liberty can take the victory and finally grab that championship, or the Minnesota Lynx can extend this series and try to push back. They looked like they were in control in a number of games, and plus the first half of Game 3, but we have to see how well they're going to be able to have offense in equal measure to their defense tonight. So excited to talk to Coach again before that. I mentioned the 3-game hockey slate. We'll get to a lot of that. We'll get to talk to Joe Madden later on here on Game Time Decisions, but we got the Hurricanes taking on the Penguins. This can potentially get a little high scoring. You've got 2 goaltenders where Anderson's fantastic, but sometimes it takes him a minute to get hot between the pipes, whereas for the Penguins, it hasn't been all that great. So hockey to get to, MLB to continue to break down, plenty of NFL, and so much more, which means you're going to want to stick around with us here on Game Time Decisions on SportsGrid TV. Also, make sure you're following us over on X. That's at SportsGrid. We got our first break coming up here, and then we've got Brady Cannon getting ready to join us to talk some NFL. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us on the other side of this quick break.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV, giving you the full Friday slate, running through all of the professional leagues because there is so much going on in the sports world. But I get to talk with one of my faves, Brady Cannon, to dive deeper into the NFL slate. We've got a number of games, you guys have probably heard me and Tom Vecchio talk about it, that are just circled on the calendar that are very exciting matchups coming up on Sunday. And I see that Brady's got some bets, some picks, some favorites going on here. So let's go ahead and dive in. First and foremost, Brady, how are you? I hear that it's winter over in Vegas. Are you in Vegas right now?
Oh my goodness, yeah. This golf tournament has been crazy. Of course, Kasey, let me start by saying we have truly a record-breaking summer, the hottest summer on record here in Las Vegas. It was 100 degrees just like a week ago, if not a handful of days ago. They tee off at TPC Summerlin yesterday. It's about 80. Today, the high is supposed to be 69, and the wind is blowing 35, 40 miles an hour. It's crazy. They didn't even start the tournament until about 11 o'clock local time today. The guys that are playing right now are still at a serious disadvantage. They're finally supposed to get back to about 75 degrees on Sunday, but yeah, just a very weird weather pattern here. It's been weird all summer long, so hot. I mean, it's mid-October and it's still 100. That never happens. And then all of a sudden you come crashing down here in the wind and what have you. But yeah, I didn't go outside wearing shorts today. Let's put it that way.
Seriously. And I thought it was just us. I was shocked when I woke up the other day and it was like 41 degrees. And I was like, no. We don't do this in Florida. This is not the time. I see 41 degrees in January on accident. So it's been an adjustment across the board. But I saw some cold weather in Vegas and I was like, oh, no, we have to check on everybody out there. But because of how hot the summer was, I'm very nervous for this winter. But I know some guys that aren't very nervous. It's going to be some of the NFL players this weekend that are going to be going toe-to-toe in some big matchups. You've got the Houston Texans taking on the Green Bay Packers, and this game I have circled on the calendar for a number of reasons. We've seen CJ Stroud have a little bit more of a human game about a week or two ago, but to go against another young quarterback for Green Bay, I feel like that's just going to intensify this matchup. Two really good teams, two really talented rosters, 2.5 spread, 47.5 on the total. What are you liking about this matchup?
Well, what got me started on this one, Kasey, is at the beginning of the week, I try and close myself to any outside noise. I don't want to hear any point spreads, see any point spreads. I sit down at the desk here and just make all of my own numbers, an educated guess, if you will, what I kind of have as far as ratings are in my head and put a number down on these games. And then what I'll do is go look at where the sports books have opened up these numbers. And I made the Green Bay Packers a 4.5-point favorite. And then I saw that it was a 3 is where the books put it up. And we've even seen it come down to 2.5 in some spots. Looks like 3 is pretty much the consensus number. And I think that's probably where it'll close. So that was my first thought. I'm like, oh, okay, boy, I've got a discrepancy here. I have not been thoroughly impressed with the Houston Texans. They have a lot of talent. They're a very good team. I think they're very well coached. They're probably due for some regression this year off of, going from the outhouse to the penthouse, from, 3 or 4 wins per season, and then winning the division in glorious fashion last year, probably set to come back to reality a little bit this year. And I think they've kind of been doing that. They've underachieved a little bit, I feel. They should have blown out Chicago. They barely beat Chicago in week 1. And then last week, they look like a good, solid team that should take care of business against the New England Patriots, and they did. But so what? That's New England. I think this is a totally different test here. They're on the road for the second straight week. The Packers, a lot of people might not realize this. Their offense kind of gets a lot of accolades. Jordan Love, the wide receivers, Josh Jacobs. Their defense is actually pretty darn good. And the Houston Texans have, once again, a lot of injuries. So I give Green Bay a heavy advantage here, and I think laying 2.5 or 3 is not a problem. I don't think it's going to get to 3 and a hook, but and it's never a great practice to lay 3 and a hook. But my first thought came to 4.5 as far as a number. I'll gladly lay the points here with the Packers.
Yeah, and that's what makes this game so hard to kind of gauge, because you're not wrong in the sense of Texans made some moves in the offseason, adding to their defense, bringing in a few veteran presences that I thought were going to be a bit more ferocious and helping out this team kind of close out certain matchups. And you just didn't really see that. And plus, anyone going against the Patriots, you got to take that as a grain of salt, right? So there was just certain things that Tom and I were talking about on Pro Football Today where we were like, we're not seeing the best of CJ Stroud at the moment. Maybe that was because of the injuries. Then you get Joe Mixon back. Then it feels a little obvious that he's going to be your ground game, your pinpoint to try to pull off a victory here. They have some versatility in who they can go to between Dell and Diggs starting to get more action, but this one's just so close, and my biggest question typically is, like, who's going to be on the healthier side? But you're right. Packers are underestimated when it comes to their defense and what they can do and how they can hold their own. And more importantly, they've got just a ferocious offense coming at the other team. So big fan of that. Still can't pick a side here because I have the Texans going a little bit further in the season, but we'll see what takes place there. Now, we do have another neck-and-neck matchup. This one, I truly cannot pick a side. The Vikings have had another surprising start to this season. Looks like Sam Darnold finally may have found a home. You've got a great football mind controlling the Minnesota Vikings, but most importantly, you have a Lions team that's really done everything right in the offseason. They lose Hutchinson to that season-ending injury. They have the potential in the cap space to pick somebody up, but that's not the priority at the moment because they still have enough pieces to be a formidable team. You've got the spread sitting at 1.5. Minnesota Vikings favored in this one, 50.5 on the total, which seems a bit high for two defenses that could potentially show up. So what do we like in this one?
I like the Lions here, Kasey. I made the game a pick'em, and when I run the stats, I actually make the Lions a very short favorite here. And a couple angles going into this one that I like. Now, normally Detroit, off of just a brilliant performance and a thrashing of the Dallas Cowboys last week, I wouldn't necessarily want to bet on them because they're probably a little bit inflated. But that's not necessarily the case here because they're taking on an undefeated Minnesota Vikings team. So one angle, Minnesota undefeated. They're on a roll going into their bye week. The last thing they needed was a pause to halt that momentum. And on the other side, Detroit, you mentioned losing Aiden Hutchinson, a little bit of the fallen hero theory here. I think the troops rally around the fact that this guy is no longer going to be with this club. I think you get an inspired effort once again from the Lions. I think they'll win the game outright.
I'm leaning towards the Lions too. I'm really nervous of that vacation. Don't go anywhere. Quick break on the other side.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. And before we get back to chatting with Brady Cannon and talking about the Lions versus Minnesota game, I feel it's my duty to update you on what's going on in the MLB. Mets are up 8-1 versus the Dodgers, top of the 4th. as this game continues to roll through. I mentioned Pete Alonso picking up a home run earlier, and then just a number of other guys, Marti and company, continuing to add some points to the board. Now, Brady, we're talking about the Lions. We were talking about the Vikings. You mentioned a good point of Vikings potentially losing momentum, and some people, that's where they're getting stuck on how to bet this game. They feel like Minnesota just having that downtime is probably going to give them a slow start versus the Lions. But sometimes we've seen the Lions come out and have a strong first and kind of get tangled up in that second half there. So do you think that that could be a problem, or that this is really just kind of the Lions to show that they're the team to contend with this season?
Well, that's a great question. This is an opportunity for either one of these teams to make a statement in the division. And I think the Lions at the end of the day are the better team. I think you could argue they might be the best team in the entire NFL. But I like I say, I normally wouldn't want to bet them off of that Herculean effort that they had against Dallas. But that Hutchinson thing, that's a perfect little nugget for Dan Campbell to use as a motivational tool this week. Hey, our star is gone. Guys, we're going to need everybody else to step up. And you see that. You saw it with the Green Bay Packers when Jordan Love went down and trying to remember Malik, I can't remember his name.
Neighbors?
No, the backup quarterback for the Packers.
Okay.
The kid
Williams, I think.
He played for Liberty and the Tennessee, Malik Willis.
There we go.
So Jordan Love goes down and the sky is falling and everybody, what are we going to do? No, the Packers stepped up and crushed the Colts in the following week. They rallied around. They knew it was going to have to, they were going to have to make up for their fallen hero. I think it's similar here with Aiden Hutchinson. They know that they are going to have to come with a huge effort. And that first game off of that, that star being injured is a good time to bet on a team. And that combined with Minnesota going into that bye week, being on a roll, stopping that momentum, coming out the other side for a team like that is when I like to bet against them. So angles converging here for me. Now, yeah, to your point, Minnesota's not going to go away lightly here. They're at home. I think they have a tremendous home field advantage, one of the best in the NFL. It's going to be a war, but I think at the end of the day, Detroit will find a way to win this one outright. It's basically a pick 'em game, and that's what I made it. I made it a pick 'em. I think Detroit will get the W.
Yeah, I like that headline too of kind of mentioning rallying behind like your fallen soldier, and of all things, this is a guy that was looking to potentially take home Defensive Player of the Year.
Right.
So I think that stings a little bit more, but also just gasses up his team that much more as well. Another game that we've got on the docket is going to be the Dolphins versus the Colts, sitting at a 3 spread at the moment, 43.5 per FanDuel. But you're talking about a Dolphins team that's had to weather their own storms in terms of injuries and question marks, starting to kind of trying to fight a rhythm there. And then you got the Colts, where the biggest thing that I saw on Twitter this week was Flacco's better than Richardson. Can you really compare the two for one? But most importantly, what do you like in this Dolphins-Colts matchup?
I agree, Kasey. If Joe Flacco was playing in this game, I would not be betting against the Colts. I think most bettors feel that way, that Richardson is susceptible to turnovers. He's certainly the better athlete, and probably has the higher ceiling, but Flacco's been outstanding this season. So I don't mind going against the Colts when Richardson is in there. But most of all, it's the scheduling spot, and I'll go back to the bye week as well. I talk about Minnesota being on a roll going into the bye. The Dolphins were struggling going into their bye week. They have injuries that, obviously Tua's not there. They needed that week off to reset and assess and give Tyler Huntley some more reps with the starters and figure out how they're going to move forward the rest of the season. And that pause was tremendously timed for the Miami Dolphins. Now they come out on the other side and they should be inspired and ready to go once again. The Colts, on the other hand, the scheduling spot is atrocious. They've come off of 2 division games in a row. And on the other side, they're going to have yet another division game on the road at Houston, a team that they're looking to avenge a loss to earlier in the year that beat them already. So there's a ton going on division-wise for the Indianapolis Colts, a real sandwich spot here when a team that, a lot of people have kind of left for dead in the Miami Dolphins. I think they jump up and catch the Colts, and I think they win this one outright as well.
Yeah, that is a good point, too, especially because it just kind of feels like more momentum would potentially be on the Dolphins side with the rest and what they have to prove and how they're going to be able to pull things off on the other side. And look, I said UF doesn't breed quarterbacks. Don't anyone be mad at me. It just kind of tends to hold up, and that's my only opinion when it comes to Richardson. But Brady Canyon, thank you so much for joining me here on Game Time Decisions. It's been a long time. Y'all go nowhere. We got another quick break coming up here on SportsGrid. Fantastic. Thank you, Brady. You too. I'll talk.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
You are watching Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. We got a lot going on this Friday. We just got a chance to talk with Brady Cannon, going through some of the NFL slate and picking some of the biggest games of the week. Now, just to kind of touch back on what we talked on there, he's got the Packers covering. He's laying the points there at -2.5 versus the Texans. This is going to be an interesting matchup because Texans defense will be put to the challenge by an explosive offense. Not to mention is it looks like they're getting a little bit healthier as well. Also, Lions to cover 1.5 versus the Vikings. Dolphins +3 versus the Colts. Flacco potentially a better option than Richardson at the moment. And then Cardinals at +2 versus the Chargers, which we didn't get a chance to get to before the break. So always a great time catching up with Brady Cannon. Then, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to get into some WNBA because we've got a big Game 4 coming up around the 8 o'clock hour. And guess who's joining me to break that one down? If you guys joined me on WNBA today, we got a chance to talk then. Now we're going to talk again. Coach James Young joining me here on Game Time Decisions so that we can get you ready for Game 4, Liberty versus the Lynx. And look, guys, I'm just asking for the Lynx to make it interesting. I'm asking for them to push this series along. I just have a few small requests, and while I thought Coach was somewhat entertaining what I was asking for, he gave me some great bets to give me hope, but it seems like a lot of people are leaning with the Liberty on this one. So let's see, we got Coach coming in here so that we can break down what we discussed earlier. Coach, do I got you? All right.
Hey, listen, sir, Kasey, so nice. I see you twice. I know you. I know you are pumped up about this game. I am so pumped up about this. I am a long-time suffering New York fan. Kofsky, our producer,
I've heard about those
right now, so we're okay. Kofsky and I like the Jets. They're terrible, so we're banking on the New York Liberty to bring home a championship. I think it's going to be a really, really tight game.
You think they can feed off the momentum that the Mets are doing right now? I mean, up 8-2 versus the Dodgers. That would feel good if I heard that as I was warming up and getting ready for the game.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, we're Met fans, so it ain't over until the game is over because a lot of things can happen. But I think you want me to talk WNBA with you, so let's talk some ladies hoops.
Yes, let's do that because I can't really help Mets fans, especially when it comes to the hope department. You and I got a chance to talk earlier about this matchup going on here shortly. 3.5 spread, 159.5 when it comes to the total. But most importantly, the playmakers that are going to help swing this game in either favor of the Lynx or favor of the Liberty. So let's start with the Liberty. Brandon Stewart coming off of a tremendous 30-point performance, 11 rebounds. When we talked with Dexter Henry last week, he said this is a lady who's going to have to be able to get back in rare form in order to help her team pull off the W's. But most importantly, it's Sabrina Ionescu who had a tremendous 1-second monster play to make sure that her team was able to seal an 80-77 victory. So what are you in store for tonight, Coach?
I think great basketball, and I think, we talked about WNBA today earlier, people were listening, and in case you haven't, I'm just going to repeat it. I think this game's going to be really close. I think it's going to be really close to the best. If you look at, just really quick, the starters last game, Lainey Hamilton, 35 minutes, Stewie, 36, Jonquil, 33, Phoebich, 33, Ionescu, 32, and then on the flip side, when you look at the Minnesota Lynx, you had Carrollton with 34, Fish had 40, McBride, 38, Williams, 33. That means starters, heavy minutes. And remember, folks, this is different. When they went to game 3, it was 2 nights rest, and then they played. This is 1 night rest. Their legs are going to be heavy in this game. I expect, we talked about it earlier, I like the Liberty win the game. I think Minnesota gets off to a quick start. I think they got to play with the lead and lean on that home crowd early. Minnesota early, Liberty late. But here's what I'm going to give you one little caveat, folks. If you bet the Liberty, let the game start to play out because I think they steal it. If it's like 10-12 at the break, I don't think they're going to come back. So I would wait till halftime if you want to go home with the Liberty because I think it's going to be close early. The only way Minnesota wins this game is by blowout. So I would look at, and we talked about this, I think you and I talked about this when they played the Aces. Well, I was like, you know what? Take the Aces to win by 10 plus. If you like Minnesota, I would take them on an alt line and take it -5, 5.5 for Minnesota because I don't think they win close. I think they win big or New York wins close.
Interesting. It's unfortunate, Coach, that all I heard from that was have hope and then wipe your tears away later because it's the Liberty's game for the taking. I don't know if I'm getting the translation wrong there, but before we move on from the WNBA, talk some hoops for the NBA. Let's go ahead and quickly run through your best bets card because you've got some playmakers to keep a close eye on as well that I want to make sure fans are on top of before that 8 o'clock tip-off goes down here shortly on Friday.
Yeah, I like Sabrina Ionescu to go over 2.5 made threes. Listen, at the end of the day, it's about the attempts that Sab is going to get. And the way that she hit those 2, I mean, they were daggers, and they were deep daggers. I think that got her going. Sabrina Ionescu should be active early over 2.5 main threes. Leona Phoebich, this girl's a rookie, but she's 24, 10-plus points. Now listen, if you're Cheryl Reeve, you're saying to myself, I can't let Sab go off. I certainly can't let someone like Stewie go off. I got to go with maybe one of the ancillary players. Phoebich was big in game number 4. Game number 3, I should say. Lainey Hamilton, game number 2. I think Lainey Hamilton focuses on defense, particularly on McBride. Leona Phoebich, 10-plus points. And then team total under 78.5 for the Minnesota Lynx. Because of the fact that only 1 day off, right? I think they slow the game down. This is a half-court game. I like them to go under 78.5. So even if they win by 10-15, I think this is going to be a really slow-down game. Lynx, team total under 78.5 points.
All right, Coach. Well, we're not too far out from seeing what the result will be. Will New York fans be happy at the end of the day, or will Minnesota fans continue to have a little bit more hope? Outside of that, I promised that we were going to get to some NBA, but more importantly, let's kind of see where the futures lie when it comes to the finals conversation for this 2024-25 season. Right now, you got the Celtics sitting on top plus 310, followed by the Oklahoma City Thunder, then the Knicks, then the 76ers, then the Timberwolves, and the Nuggets. We saw a lot of great stuff out of the Timberwolves. Another Minnesota team, guys. I'm not choosing all this, I swear. But when you kind of look at the top teams when it comes to the finals conversation, where's your opinion lying on this NBA season so far?
I hate to be chalk case, but I do think it's going to be Boston, Oklahoma City in the finals. Simply put, I know Boston is going to have the injuries with Kristaps Porzingis out for the first couple of months, but him at the 5 just is a completely different dynamic because of the way to defend. Out west, Hartenstein is out for the next 4 or 5 weeks. I said that they needed 2 things, Oklahoma City. They needed a rim-protecting big to protect Chet, and they needed a defender. Well, you go get Hartenstein, and then you get Alex Caruso, one of the best defensive guards. I think those 2 teams are in a collision course to the NBA Finals.
All right. That could be something very interesting. And then before we let you go here, Coach, do you have any thoughts on the MVP running? Of course, you got Giannis sitting at the top, Alexander shortly behind. You've got a number of guys sitting here for this conversation. So who sticks out to you?
I like SGA to be MVP. I think they're going to be the best team in the Western Conference, probably have the best record. I like SGA to be the MVP. But Kasey, if there is a layup that I think is out there, I know it's minus 155. Wembanyama to win Defensive Player of the Year. Simply put, 29.7 minutes per game, 3.5 blocks, and I think it's 2.5 steals. If this guy plays 35 minutes, you're going to see, ready for this line? 25 points, 12.5 rebounds, 5 blocks, 5 assists, 2.5 steals. If he gets that, turn out the lights, the party's over.
Well, hopefully the party doesn't end too soon, but I love those numbers, and we love a Defensive Player of the Year conversation. But, Coach, as always, thank you so much for your perspective and for your breakdowns. Hopefully we're still friends at the end of this Liberty versus Lynx matchup. We'll have to jump back into a conversation after 8 o'clock tonight. But most importantly, y'all stick with us here on Game Time Decisions on SportsGrid TV. Make sure you're following at SportsGrid over on X because we've got more to get to in the MLB, the NHL, and so much more. We got a quick break coming up, so I'll see you guys on the other side.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. We got a lot of sports to get to. We just talked with Brady Cannon going through some of the NFL slate. Just talked with Coach James Young doing the WNBA game. Game 4 getting ready to go off at 8 p.m. tonight. Then touched on some NBA futures. Now it's time to get into some hockey with Joe Madden, and I'm so excited. We got a 3-game slate tonight in the NHL. Hurricanes versus Penguins, Sharks versus Jets, Ducks versus Avalanche, and the drama continues as we try to figure out what is going on with the Colorado Avalanche. But luckily, I don't have to have that conversation by myself. No, I get to chat with Joe Madden, see where her angles and odds are for this one, and just not only how to make some money, but how to hope for one of these teams to just pull off a W, and that one team being the Colorado Avalanche. So, Joe, welcome in. It's so good to chat with you here, but let's see what's going on. What do you've got pegged for the Hurricanes versus Penguins game?
Yeah, looking at this game, Kasey, I think it's going to be a good one here. We look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, and this team has been rolling hot offensively. The problem has been their defense. They've allowed 21 goals over 5 games. It's a hard number to wrap your head around how this defense has been collapsing out there. Now, Tristan Jarry won't be in goal, and he has been such a prime issue in net. We will have Bloomquist coming out, and I do think he has solid numbers. When we look at the Carolina Hurricanes, small sample size for this team. They've only played in those 2 games. We know that last game versus the New Jersey Devils, they were strong, limiting the Devils to only 2 goals, but they did give up 4 versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. I do think both of these teams, even though when you look at the numbers, you think that this one should go over that total, I just can't get there. This is a battle of the Metro, and when these teams meet up, you normally do see advantages for the road team on that ice, but I'm looking here at the Penguins, and the plus money we're getting with the Penguins at right around that plus 132 mark, I think is a play on, and I really do like this one to stay under that 6.5. I'm looking for the Pittsburgh Penguins, if they're to win this, for them to come out so strong defensively in this matchup, and you're getting so much more plus money than you were getting this morning, as money has come in on the Carolina Hurricanes. That live number, as you guys can see, is coming in at plus 146. I trust the Penguins in the battle of the Metro here to get it done on their home ice, Kasey. It is Friday, and it's always a freaky Friday out there on the ice. This is when the upsets do come.
Yeah, very good point. And I have a lot of friends back home who somehow became Penguins fans. I know how they did, but just still a wild conversation to have that'll be very excited about your take. But I'm right there with you. I mean, it's really hard to kind of gauge this one because 2 teams that can be offensively high-powered, but one team that can kind of stack a little heavier defensively in their D zone. And right now the Hurricanes aren't doing that. Not to mention is that we see a lot of special team action. If we do see a lot of special team action between these teams, Hurricane special teams aren't looking like what they did last season, and we got to see if Anderson can rise to the value that this team needs him to play with in between the pipes. So big matchup in the Metro, and hopefully some good pointage to pick up. Malkin, one of the top point leaders in the league right now, regardless of the offensive power the Hurricanes are delivering. Now, we got the Sharks versus the Jets, and I know a lot of Canadians are excited right now because you've got a number of Canadian teams that were sitting in such a high W record as this NHL season came along. Jets being one of those top teams that just continue to be pretty effective and efficient. What do you like in seeing in this matchup?
Well, first, Kasey, it's only the Winnipeg fans that are excited for the Winnipeg Jets because Canadian teams are so loyal to their own, and we would actually rather see an American team take it over a Canadian team a lot of the times. We saw it last year in the playoffs. Not a lot of love for Edmonton, but I am from the Calgary area, but Winnipeg is the same kind of beast for most Canadians out there. When we look at this matchup, the San Jose Sharks, Tyler Toffoli, ex-player here for the Winnipeg Jets, he's been on a ton of teams, but I do think he's a player you have to circle to come out hard tonight in this matchup. I'm looking at Tyler Toffoli for the anytime goal here. He's coming in at plus 240. You can look at his point. That's coming in at plus 102. Now, we know Celebrini will not be out on the ice for the Sharks tonight. Lower body injury, but you've got to look at the other rookie that they did pick up, Will Smith, coming out here. If you can take his point on your book, it's right around that plus 180. It's actually not listed on FanDuel tonight. His anytime goal is listed on FanDuel at plus 550. He's yet to record a point out here this season, but I do think he's going to be a difference maker for this team, and I'm just waiting for those props to start hitting for him. When we look at the Winnipeg Jets here, I'm kind of leery of taking them tonight, as such a big favorite, especially when you look at the last three matchups between these two teams. They've all been 1-goal games. Winnipeg Jets winning 2 of those, the Sharks winning the other one. Lower scoring games, though, out there. With how these two teams match up, though, tonight, I do think you've got to look at the over 5.5 in this one. I was expecting Eric Comrie, not Hellebuck. It is Hellebuck confirmed. They still allowed some goals, and I look at their last couple of games here, and yes, they had a fantastic one versus Edmonton, but the last two, not as impressed as I should be. So I'm going to take a sprinkle on the Sharks in this one. You can look at them plus 1.5. I'm going to take the over 5.5. And you got to look at those power play points tonight for anyone on Winnipeg. I really love Josh Morrissey for the power play points. He's coming in at plus 210.
Oh, yeah. Morrissey is such a good quarterback for that team.
Yeah, he is absolutely fantastic out there. And you look at this power play, it's clicking, Kasey, at 42.9%. The kill's strong for the Sharks, but it can't hold up forever.
No, can't hold up forever. And you mentioned the key guy that can help get any action in that one, and that's Tyler Toffoli. But I think you get the revenge point. I love that. I love the goal even more because of the value, but I do have him for a 1+ point tonight because of that factor. And then most importantly, it's really hard to compete against Hellebuck. I wasn't sure if he was going to be between the pipes either. But that being said, they know what is expected from the Sharks. They know they have a lot of young talent. They have a couple good key veteran presence there. But the key script for this Sharks team was to get Will Smith involved and to get William Eklund to step up as well. So to feed off of Tyler Toffoli and company, we'll see where they can go from there. And just kind of adding to the Hellebuck thing, sitting at a .976 save percentage at the moment, 0.66 goals against, 83 shots that he's weathered, 6.4 goals saved above average. So he's been pretty stout, but we've seen the Winnipeg Jets be so tough to play against, and then we kind of see certain things fizzle out. So much hockey left as the season just got going. We got another game to get to here on Game Time Decisions, and then we're going to pick Joe Madden's brain when it comes to the NFL slate coming up on Sunday. Like I said, there's so many games that are just circled as great games to watch this weekend. So we got a quick break coming up here on SportsGrid TV. We talk about the Ducks and the Avalanche. Is tonight the Avalanche get out of that L column, finally find a W? So much talent, but how can they finally find a way to execute and be efficient? Don't go anywhere. We got another quick break here, and Joe and I will catch you on the other side.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
And the Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts them at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back at it here on SportsGrid TV with Game Time decisions on this Friday night and an update on the MLB. We've got the Mets on top 10-2 versus the Dodgers, and I'm seeing the end of the fourth at the moment. But outside of that, I get to talk hockey with Joe Madden, as well as some NFL and a few other things. We were just talking about the Sharks versus the Jets game, some of the top picks in that one. But now we've got to figure out, Joe, what is going to happen between the Ducks and the Avalanche. The Avalanche have a very talented roster, but maybe it's my own personal opinion. I haven't trusted goaltending for the Avs in a while. I felt like there were some mistakes in terms of getting rid of Grubauer, getting rid of Varlamov before that. So there's a number of things that I just haven't seen clicking when it comes to between the pipes. But you let me know your opinion. Do we finally see a W for Colorado tonight?
I don't know if they're going to get it done here, Kasey. It's a scary situation when you look at how strongly the Anaheim Ducks are clicking offensively. We look at their last game. They recorded 25 high-danger shots. This offense is coming together. And I do think here, if Georgiev continues to struggle in goal, we can see the opportunity for the Ducks to come in and pull off the win. At the value, you're getting the Ducks plus 1.5 on the puck line. It makes so much sense versus a Colorado team that is yet to win. Now, at some point, they have to start clicking out there. But at what point is it going to be? Is it going to be once they get on the road? I'm not willing to put my money on Colorado unless it's player props in this one. I will look, though, in the first period. I think Colorado has the opportunity of scoring as well on Dostal. Dostal coming out here for the Anaheim Ducks. Well, he's got great numbers to start the season. He has struggled immensely versus Colorado in his career. And when we look at Georgiev, he should be able to get things right here because this is a team, the Anaheim Ducks, that he's absolutely been standing on his head against. So I'm hoping Colorado can get back in that win column. It just won't get my money tonight. I'll look at both teams to score in the first period. I think these offenses come out nice and hot. Both teams to score in the first period coming in at plus 152. Now I'm going to look at Troy Terry here for the Anaheim Ducks for the anytime goal. We got him in that last game. I expect him to come out nice and strong again in this one today. And then when we look again, the power play absolutely sound here for Colorado, converting at 50% of the time, which is fantastic. I'm going to look at Nathan MacKinnon. Now, there's no value for him to get a goal tonight. It's minus 150. I can't hit there. First period goal for Nathan MacKinnon coming in at plus 330, and I could see him converting on that power play at minus 130, but a longer shot on the power play where I like to get that money. Ross Colton got it done for us in the last game. I'm going to look at Casey Middlestat in this one for the power play point. That's coming in at plus 260, Kasey.
I actually really, really like those. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't know if I can put my money on Colorado to get the job done. The road situation also makes me a bit nervous, but you can't underestimate the Ducks. They've been able to pull off some pretty decent wins, and most importantly, they've got a few key veterans on their roster as well. Alex Killorn plays very well versus Colorado. He's got a bad taste in his mouth after losing, or he wasn't on the roster at the time because of injury, but how the Tampa Bay Lightning fell short to Colorado a couple years back. And then also you've got Ross Colton, who stepped up tremendously as well for the Colorado Avalanche, but then Leo Carlsson for the Ducks. 2 goals, 1 assist through 3 games. So he's somebody who likes to score versus Colorado too. So this can be very interesting. I love both teams to score in that first period a lot. Now, before we let you go, Joe, I got to see what your opinion is on some of the top games in the NFL. Ones that are circled on the calendar is going to be this NFC North battle for one. We've got the Vikings taking on the Lions, and some people just don't know where to scratch their head on this one. So do you have a take on that one quite yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got the Vikings circled all day in this one, coming in off a bye, and we've got a short price on them at home on the money line. I do think this is one where their defense comes out so nice and sound. I'm looking for that defensive touchdown coming in at plus 750. Jared Goff has a fantastic arm, but he has already thrown 4 interceptions on the season. And the way that this Vikings defense has been playing, how they're able to blitz the quarterback, put that pressure on them, I do think they have every opportunity of getting the defensive touchdown. I'm going to also circle Justin Jefferson here for his receiving yards over 91.5. It's coming in at minus 113, but I'm also going to open this number up. I do think you can take him for 125 plus receiving yards in this game at plus 250. When we look at him versus the Lions, he's had so much success. In the last 3 matchups, he was able to put up 192 yards, 141, and 223 KC. So big day for him in this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me to pick. I've always kind of my backup teams have been Minnesota for the longest time, and then you've got a Lions team that has just been very impactful so far. But I like those picks a lot, Joe, especially because Justin Jefferson is just such a force to be reckoned with. But most importantly, make sure you're following at Joe Madden. Make sure you're watching when she throws her bets out there throughout the day. Joe, thank you so much for joining me here on Game Time Decisions. Don't go anywhere. We got more to get into here on this Friday on SportsGrid.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that has a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. On this lovely Friday, we've got Mets playing, we've got the WNBA getting ready to go and seeing if the Liberty can pull off a big Game 4, and then we've got a lot of NFL to get into after we just talked some NHL with Joe Madden. But continuing the NFL conversation, we get to talk with Mark Zinno and figure out what's going to take place this Sunday, but most importantly, where some of these teams lie in the standings, because we have a big NFC North battle coming up. Again, I don't know which side to go here. There's a lot of things that back up the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of people concerned about the extra rest and then leaning towards the Lions. But before we get your take, Mark, I got to figure out NFC Championship winner. The numbers so far still have the 49ers on top. Lions right behind them. Vikings chasing their tail. Eagles somehow right there in the mix, but that could be me sounding very biased. Green Bay Packers behind them, and then the Atlanta Falcons for your top 6 of the NFC. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, look, I mean, when you're the Green Bay Packers and you lead the league in takeaways and you lead the league in turnover differential and your quarterback is solid, I was somebody who was not very high on Jordan Love. I thought he was quickly overpaid, and probably the Packers made a mistake in doing it. And that's not to denigrate him as a player. 8 games wasn't enough for me. All that said, as he gets back from injury and we start to see this team here begin to mature and their defense be at the level that they are, seems pretty fair to me that they would be a viable contender. Now, look, they have one of the toughest divisions to go through, and their path through the NFC might not be that easy, because if they don't win the NFC North, they're going to have to go on the road, probably to San Francisco or Detroit, and go win a playoff game to get into the NFC Championship game, and then probably face the other one. So from that standpoint, it's going to be very difficult to do so. And Jordan Love on the road is a much different quarterback than he is at home. We got a lot of season left. But if I'm putting a bet down based off of those numbers right now, I'd look at the Green Bay Packers. I think they beat the Houston Texans this week. I think they cover the number, and this team improves. It continues to get better. The Vikings, 5-0 start, soon to be maybe 6-0 start. We'll find out. I'm still waiting for Cinderella to show up there in the glass slipper to show up. And all of a sudden we realize that Sam Darnold and the Vikings are not the belle of the ball, and we'll see where it goes from there.
You know, Cinderella these days come in the form of the frozen girl Elsa, and I'm sure that with the weather there in Minnesota, they're probably feeling all the Cinderella vibes. But that is a good point, and you already alluded to it and probably kind of gave us some of your take. But what do you think goes down between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, sitting at a 1.5 spread and a 50.5 total? And honestly, I didn't know what to make of this total because some of the things that I've heard about what the expectation is defensively, regardless of the loss for the Lions with Hutchinson, I still don't know particularly how they get to this total unless one team is just going to suffer immensely. So what do you think of this matchup?
Well, it's interesting. Again, I think it's a very high total, all things considered. Now, Detroit actually has a defense this year. We don't know what they are without Aiden Hutchinson and what that's going to look like. But the Vikings defense also isn't that bad either. The hard part here to figure out is that Jared Goff inside a dome, even if he's on the road, has been an incredibly different quarterback than he is indoors, than he is outdoors. So this plays well into the Lions' hands. That said, I've bet against Sam Darnold, I think, in 3 consecutive weeks, starting in week 2, week 3, and week 4, and was wrong all 3 weeks. So I'm not going to do it here at home. The Lions do struggle on the road. I think the home field advantage here plays into the Vikings. But I also would tell you, if you believe in the under, you probably believe in the Vikings because that means they're stopping the Lions from scoring and that Jared Goff isn't having his greatest day. If the Lions can score, I don't know that that the Vikings can really keep up offensively. So, I mean, and the big thing is too is the running game here. I think the Lions have a huge edge in the running game with Gibbs and Montgomery versus what the Vikings have, and you know they may be able to control the pace of the game, control the game on the ground, and then we know the weapons that they have in the receiving game here. But I don't want to bet against Minnesota at home. The 5-0 doesn't even kind of play into this, and I know they've covered all 5 games, so it's like, what are they going to cover 6 in a row? I guess, yeah, maybe they could, because this really is a money line play here. Why even lay the 1.5? Just take the money line if you like the Vikings and try to get out of there.
Yeah, they're definitely a hard team to bet against. And I have some people that just say, could this potentially be another miracle season? And I think it's so rude to compare it, but who knows? Cinderella miracles, all the things can come into play. Now, another big matchup I mentioned sitting on top of the NFC at the moment, or in terms to win the NFC, are the San Francisco 49ers. Haven't seen them particularly pull off exactly some of the exemplary games that they had last season. But with that said, they take on the Chiefs this week. They host the Chiefs, more importantly, 1.5 spread, 47.5 on the total here. And a lot of people don't know where to go because you don't bet against Mahomes, you don't bet against Reed, you don't bet against the Chiefs yet. This Chiefs team has been different. Mahomes has been different. And is this defense going to be enough to hold off the 49ers, or are the 49ers going to show up for this one?
Well, moreover, you don't bet against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes off a bye. But, however, Andy Reid's historically good record off a bye. He's lost the last 2 years coming off a bye. And that's really been something as of note here. Look, San Francisco is the better team. I don't think there's any debating that at this point in time. San Francisco is a more complete and better team than Kansas City at this point in time, other than that Mahomes guy who turns out to be pretty good from time to time. Stress time to time. That said, I mean, I would find a partner here and tease Kansas City to 7.5. Like, I don't want to bet against KC, especially when they're a dog. You almost never see this scenario. But I think San Francisco's too good, but this feels like a one-score game either way. And if I can find a partner, whether it's Seattle, whether it's the Commanders or somebody else that takes me to, the Chiefs plus 7.5, I think the 49ers tend to win the game. Why? Because these regular season matchups against the Chiefs seem to matter more to the team that they're playing than it does to Kansas City. Because Kansas City just says, we'll see you in the playoffs and we'll beat you there where it matters, which is what they do to Buffalo all the time, which is what they do to, San Francisco all the time. So it's like, this game has more revenge factor for San Francisco than it does necessarily Kansas City winning a non-conference game in week 6 or week 7 of the NFL, whatever it may be. So, again, all things considered, I look at this and I go, I wouldn't bet against San Francisco here, but I don't think they win by 2 scores. So find a partner, and I would tease KC to 7.5.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. More on the shoulders for the 49ers, and we'll see what plays out at 4:25 on Sunday. Now, another big game with a new acquisition under their belt. You got the Jets taking on the Steelers. Steelers giving the tap to Russell Wilson. Some fans love it, some fans hate it, but most importantly, you can't underestimate what the Steelers defense can do. Yeah, you've got a Jets team and Aaron Rodgers, who Rodgers is hitting some pretty immense numbers regardless of them wanting to focus on the ground game or air out the ball, whatever his case may be. But now he has an extra target in the mix to air out the ball too. So Wilson props and Lazard props and all these things are probably going to take a little bit of a shift. But how do you start attacking this game, sitting at a 1.5 spread, a 38.5 total?
I mean, make this make sense for me for a second here. The hell are the Jets favored? Like, what have you seen from the Jets going up with this offense, going up against one of the toughest defenses in the league on the road, that the Jets should be a 1.5 point favorite here? Like, Devontae Adams doesn't move this line. That's not where this is coming from. This would be the line, if Devontae Adams is there or not, but, maybe a half point, whatever. But still, I find it hard to believe the Jets are favored here. That said, I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot pole because I don't know what Russell Wilson is. I don't know how much Devontae Adams is actually going to matter. I don't know if the Jets can still block up front. I don't know if the Jets have a running game that they can deal with. So there's 100 questions about this game. And, oh, by the way, we have a new Jets coordinator, second week calling plays. What does this mean? We have a new head coach still. Arthur Smith is still the OC in Pittsburgh. Their offense still may be inept with Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields. So many variables in this game you just don't know. Look at it as a data point. Again, in theory, do you want to take the Steelers at home to a tease and make them 7.5 because their defense is good enough to stay within a score? That may be the way to do it. I mean, I've been waiting for this Jets offense to sort of mature and grow up and be an offense that actually looks like an NFL offense. We haven't really seen it, and I don't know that we see it this week against one of the toughest defenses in the league, especially on the road.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And more importantly, there were some bang-ups to the Jets defense that just kind of started to fall apart the other week. So take that into consideration going against the Steelers. And yes, there's a lot of question marks around Russell Wilson and who's going to do what. But regardless, you've got the ground game that's going to try to be as punishing as possible, try to run the clock down. And then we can see some player prop bets go off for the Jets. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to string together enough plays to pull off the win. So too many question marks in that one. Probably a stay away for a number of people. But let's see if Jets fans have something to hang on to after this game is in the books. Mark, you thank so much for joining me here on Game Time Decisions, breaking down the NFL. Fans, go nowhere. We got more NFL to get to. We got college football to get to. We got more hockey to dive into. I haven't thrown my picks out there yet, so more to get to on this Friday here on SportsGrid TV. I'll catch you on the other side of this break.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. Running through the Friday slate and more because we look ahead to Saturday's college football. We look ahead to Sunday's NFL slate. But more importantly, we got to stick with the now here on Friday. And George Kurtz joins me to talk all the things from NHL to NFL and so much more. And you know me. I got to start with the hockey. So first and foremost, George, thank you so much for hopping on and chatting with me. We got the Hurricanes versus the Penguins right now. Nice little Metro showdown. 0-0 is what I'm still seeing. This spread was coming in at 1.5. I don't look at spreads when it comes to hockey. I like to stick to the player prop bets. But heading into this matchup or looking beyond this matchup, what did you like between the Hurricanes and the Penguins in this Metro battle?
Oh, it's hard not to like the Canes. Pittsburgh's going with their backup goaltender tonight. No Tristan Jarry here. And let's face it, they're an average hockey team at best. The Canes may not be the team they've been in past seasons. They did lose a lot of depth this offseason trade with defections, rent free agency, and stuff like that. But they are still a better team. That being said, laying, was it 172 pregame to go with the Canes here? It's a little rough here. I guess you could have put it in a parlay, and they do call me I do love my parlays. Where I'm going with this Casey. And I do have one with the other two games here. But instead, I just did a little small play here. I have a prop as well in this game, but I did a little small play here on the Canes on the goal line.
Oh, okay. So what was your prop? Because I know that the Penguins are still kind of trying to find a rhythm for Carlson. And even though Carlson and Letang are probably the top pairing helping this team stay in any sort of games, they're still kind of lacking in terms of what Carlson needs to be able to fall in line to do to keep the puck in front of him. So what did you like on the prop side?
Yeah, but Carlson missed most of training camp too. I think that's what was affecting him. Came in very late. He's been okay. He has not been bad. Malkin's been great, right?
Yes.
He's been fantastic. And Crosby had the overtime goal the other night. I think Penguins, I don't think scoring goals will be that much of an issue. I think it is keeping them off the board here. So I'm actually on the Canes for a prop here. Aho has been a little slow. I mentioned backup goaltender. So give me more than 2 plus points for Aho.
Okay. I wasn't sure where to go in this one, but for the most part, not to be so basic, George, but I couldn't look away from Malkin's numbers versus Anderson, and plus, he's not the biggest shots on goal guy, but versus Anderson, he likes to tally up on the shots, so I got Malkin picking up some shots. I have him for a long shot potential goal, but I've got Penguins' third period puck line. Outside of that, it's anybody's game in my personal opinion. It would be nice to see the Canes be able to pull it off, but we shall see. As for the other hockey game that's not underway quite yet, but puck drop should be coming up at the 8 p.m. hour. We got the Sharks versus the Jets. The Jets, hot team representing Canada, even though Joe corrected me and said, we don't root for each other quite yet, which I can totally understand. But regardless, Jets are staying hot. Total sitting here at 5.5 on the line. So what do we like in this one?
Yeah, I believe the Jets are one of 3 undefeated teams in the NHL, along with your Tampa Bay Lightning and the Calgary Flames, which I don't think any of us really saw coming here. Tonight is Connor Hellebuck night, by the way. He is going to start in goal for the Jets, for whatever that's worth to anybody. I think they remain undefeated, so I'm going to go with the Jets tonight. That is my parlay. I'm taking them in the next game. We're going to talk about the Avalanche, see if they can get things in gear here against the bad Ducks team. Sharks are terrible. All right, so you're not taking this on the money line. Either you're going to play it. You can go on the goal line again if you want to go that direction. That's fine here. Maybe you want to take a little over there. You think, Winnipeg's going to score. I think you need them to score 4 goals here at least, and maybe 5, because I wouldn't shock me if Hellebuck only giving up 1 tonight if you want to go for that over. And the Jets haven't been not that dynamic. They're undefeated, but they're not scoring 5-6 goals a game. So I think the over is a little dicey here. But I'm on a parlay here. Give me the Jets and give me the Avalanche.
Oh, I can't wait to touch on that one. Within the Sharks-Jets game, really fast, I have Tyler Toffoli 1+ point minus 111, but it's going to be Ehlers for me to pick up a point, maybe even 2. Not that I expect a lot of scoring, but I think that if they get into some of a momentum swing, them being the Jets there, that they can pick up a few points, and then Hellebuck between the pipes can probably keep the Sharks out of his net. But Toffoli with the revenge score of some sort, I like the idea of that. I asked Joe, do we finally see the Colorado Avalanche get a W? She wasn't too convinced, especially with them having to be on the road. Ducks kind of have some ferocity when it comes to their special teams play, power play more specifically, and they can't be underestimated. So what's the angle on the Colorado Avalanche potentially pulling off a win?
Well, they're not going 0-82. All right. This team has all sorts of issues, okay? They don't have the depth, right? We know Landeskog, maybe he returns from the injury, maybe he doesn't. I have no idea what kind of player he's going to be even when he does return. Lakeinen, maybe early November, at least before American Thanksgiving, maybe we get him back here for Colorado. And Nichushkin, who's got a lot of personal issues, maybe somewhere around Christmas, he can get back in. So that's an entire line when you think about it of top six forward players that they don't have here. So their depth is an issue, but goaltending's been a train wreck. I don't know what happened to Georgiev. He's been awful. I mean, just awful. And we knew this going in that he was, shaky. And they didn't really do anything to upgrade. They didn't do anything to upgrade, right? You got Noonan as a backup. He's not any good either. They just claimed Kakinen off waivers. Maybe he'll get a shot here. Listen, they're not going to 0-82. You're at home. You're playing Anaheim. This has to be a win. So give me the Avalanche tonight. I'm on them. I haven't done it yet, but I don't think Georgia's playing all that well. 6.5, but it's minus 132 if you want to go over. But maybe we'll just take more of a McKinnon. Maybe he'll get 2+ points rather than take the over 6.5. I wish that was a better number because I think we are going to get some goals tonight.
I know it's not a great number, but I have that one too. McKinnon 2+ points because in any sort of wicked way possible, he can make that happen. Plus, he's turned into even more of a bruiser. There's a number of people that didn't realize how physical McKinnon can be separating guys from the puck. So I think that's something that can play into favor for the Avalanche. I just don't know if they're going to pull. Not to say that they can't pull off the W. I just don't trust them at the moment. Leo Carlsson, 2 goals, 1 assist in 3 games versus the Colorado Avalanche. That's sitting at +1 or 1+ point at +112 if Carlsson can continue his rally and roll versus Colorado. And then Callum Ritchie, I have him for a goal, but it's a long shot at +360. I think if anyone's going to sneak in there, it could be this kid. He's really good at pushing the puck forward and his positioning. So with these lines kind of being what they are at the moment, if it gets too obvious between Rantanen and McKinnon, maybe Ritchie can sneak into the mix. Picked up a goal, keeps a lot of shots pushing. So I would be excited to see what takes place. Now, pivoting from hockey, we have less than a minute. So as you guys know, Hurricanes versus Penguins going on right now. Score is still 0-0. Sharks versus the Jets getting ready to go down at 8:10 Eastern time. That's sitting at the 5.5 that George and I just talked about. And then Ducks versus the Avalanche. 1.5 on the spread, 6.5 when it comes to how many points can be picked up. But it's time for George and I to get into some football after we go to this break here on SportsGrid TV. So don't go anywhere. Follow us over at SportsGrid. Chat with us over on SportsGrid. And most importantly, stick with us here live as we continue to roll through all of the game slates on Game Time Decisions, touch on WNBA as well as MLB scores, and then the NFL slate. So we'll catch you guys on the other side of this quick break.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. And just to give you an update on this Friday, I'm so sorry, Mets fans. I mean, while it's still a good score for y'all, Mets are up 10, but the Dodgers have rallied to pick up 6. So it's 10-6 right now, top of the 6 from what I am seeing. But I have the honor and pleasure of chatting with George Kurtz. We were just going through the NHL slate. Hopes for a Colorado W to finish off that parlay party you got there, George, even though I rarely root for Colorado. But there's a few guys on their roster I'm always high up on. But pivoting over to the NFL, we've talked with Joe Madden on the NFL. We talked with Martino on the NFL. There's so many good games coming up this Sunday. But before I jump into the normal games that we talk about, some of the bigger matchups, this one is going to be a good one in my personal opinion. Seahawks versus the Falcons, spread sitting at a 3, total sitting at 50.5. You got the Falcons that are showing they're a bit of a formidable team. They started to get a rhythm going on their defense. We're starting to see more chemistry on their offense. Seahawks, I know, are pretty banged up in a sense, and then their defense tends to let up a number of plays, also being injury-ridden. But Geno Smith's numbers, regardless of what this team does, have checked out tremendously, number one. Number two, even against top competition, Lions being one of them, the Seahawks know how to rally in the second half of games. So their second half props in Lions are something that I tend to gravitate to. But what do you like and see between the Seahawks and the Falcons this weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to follow you up on Geno Smith. I'm going to take his over yardage prop in the game. Not going to take his touchdowns. He's having trouble throwing touchdowns for whatever reason. And I've been on it a couple of times where he goes up and down to the 20s, no issue. But once he gets inside the red zone, he's having trouble connecting. They're just not a very good red zone passing offense right now. But I think he'll get over his yardage prop because I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I don't expect Atlanta to have too many problems putting up points, which puts Geno in probably a trailing mode here where they're going to have to throw the football here. And let's face it, with Metcalf, Lockett, Smith, Najiba, this is a team that can throw the football if and when they want to, and trailing should be in our favor. And even Walker, by the way, he'll catch his passes out of the backfield. I kind of like that prop as well.
Yeah, that is such a good point because I think sometimes people see the props and the numbers for Geno Smith and they think that it can convert to the touchdowns. But if it hasn't been for running touchdowns, there's not much action coming in that category for the Seahawks whatsoever. But a lot of things to keep an eye on when it comes to that one. Probably a good game for the Falcons to solidify their ability to piece together the entire game from top to bottom. But a game that has a lot of question marks around it, aside from the Jets and the Steelers, and I'm sure I'll get your opinion on that shortly. It's going to be the Eagles versus the Giants. Spread sitting at a 3, total sitting at 42.5. We've seen some glimmers out of the Giants, but more importantly, they should be getting Malik Neighbors back into the mix for this matchup versus the Eagles. Eagles got some guys healthy again, but just a weird game to see them try to potentially get past the Browns, and then you got the drama from the top when it comes to Sirianni. So how do you start gauging this one?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns are a really bad team, right? The Eagles did not dominate them. All right, they won the game. That's all that matters in the NFL. You won the game, but they did not dominate them. Now, the Eagles have owned the Giants. I mean, they always beat the Giants, right? I don't think this game is going to be a butt kicking. If that's what people think it's going to be, I don't think it will be. Do I think Barkley's scoring a touchdown? Sure. But we all think that, right? That's not exactly breaking news here that he'll do that. I think the Giants can keep this close. I don't think they can win the game, although I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But they're going to get after Hurts, all right? With Lawrence there, Burns, they're going to get after Hurts. Neighbors will return. I am on his prop. I think it's going to be a big part of that passing game because I don't think the Giants are going to be able to run the ball consistently against Philadelphia, but I do think they'll be able to throw the ball. So I'll be on Neighbors here. I can't take the Giants. I really want to, but I just can't pull that trigger because I don't know what Daniel Jones is going to do. But I just don't see the Eagles running away with this game, and I do lean towards the Giants keeping this close, losing but keeping it close.
Yeah, that's what I mean by it's such a hard one to gauge, but sometimes those trends tend to pull through. I know Adam Kaufman loves to go with the trends, so if the Eagles have their number, maybe it's something that continues. Now, before we let you go, Jets versus the Steelers. I have to ask your opinion on this. 1.5 spread, 38.5 total. Jets acquire a new little toy to play with when it comes to Adams being in company with Aaron Rodgers. They're still trying to figure out the play calling and getting on the same page there. But is this a game where the Jets can probably solidify their role in the NFL, or is this where the Steelers defense just continues to dominate?
I don't understand Mike Tomlin, and I love Mike Tomlin, by the way. Probably my favorite coach in the NFL. Love his press conferences. He's a must-watch here. I don't know why he's going to Russell Wilson, and why would you want to put him in this spot? Sunday night against the Jets. all right, that defense can play him with this. They're going to make his life hard. Yes, I think the Jets take care of business. I think they get it done here. And yeah, Devontae Adams probably scores a touchdown as well. Same with Barkley. Yeah, blah, blah. We all know that Rodgers is going to look for him. That's what he does here. Remember, the Jets have only lost a couple of games because Rodgers has failed to make that big play late. Missed Garrett Wilson, who was wide open down the sideline against in England. And then last week had the same issues there. Really, the field goal kicker didn't help any either. I think the Jets do get right here because they're playing the correct team for them. I think this game actually might get out of hand a little bit here. Give me the Jets against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's a tough call there. And plus, Russell Wilson going against the pressure. We don't want to see it. But, George, thank you so much for joining me here on Game Time Decisions. Everyone, make sure you're following George as well as at SportsGrid as it is spelled out over on X. We got more to get to here on Game Time Decisions on the other side of this quick break.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row, and now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We are back at it here on Game Time Decisions on SportsGrid TV. Rolling on this Friday, we just got to talk to George Kurtz, go through some NHL, talk some NFL. A lot of great guests per usual here on Game Time Decisions. But this time we get to talk with a friend who owes me a full Tampa Bay uniform outfit because of what he did yesterday on Pro Football Today, the pregame show. But before I go back and rehash all of that, Dave Sherabin, how are you? I'm going to keep this cordial because we are friends. We are
That's
friends.
Fine.
Clearly,
Yeah,
I'm just slightly a grudge holder, just ever so slightly.
Listen, it's fine. I've told you this before. We've talked on the air, off the air. I have a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful daughters. I know how it works, okay? The ocean of estrogen, grudges run deep. You're a hockey, person. You understand the game. It's okay to hold grudges. And believe me, if we go in the corner, I know I might catch an elbow or a cross check in the back. It's fine. A little slash in front of the net. I'm good with all of it. I'm here. Good to see you. Yes, we got a lot to talk about, and we'll worry about Monday on Monday. Okay,
Yes.
Monday, there's a lot of things going on. Let's worry about Friday.
Exactly.
And first thing out of the gate is that the boys are there sweating the Mets. I think they may have to
They're
score
going
100 right
crazy.
now. Yeah, well, they might have to score 15. It might take 15 tonight to get this thing done. This is an unbelievable. There hasn't been a lot of drama in the series, but there's inside the game, there's a little bit of drama. And I mean, they were up 10-2, and now it's 11-6, and it's only the 6th. So we'll be on in-game live sweating that. We got Yankees and Guardians. We'll get to that. But I know you know what's going on right now. The
Oh.
Penguins are playing the Hurricanes.
Oh, yeah.
And for the 6th straight game, both teams have scored in the Penguins games. So bet the first period over. Put that, in your back pocket to remember for next time. Casey, they can't stop the goal. They can't stop the puck. Like every game's going to go over. Jari can't stop the puck.
Yeah, they need help. And this time I'm actually
Not even playing tonight.
I know. Backups in, but I'm actually rooting for your team to try to pull this one through. I need Malkin to do some things for me, like 3 shots on goal, maybe even get in a little goal there himself.
Okay.
So I thought that was a thing. It felt a little obvious. He's leading in points or tied for lead points in the NHL right now. And then I've got the Penguins on the third period puck line. I think that if this game stays close, that you've got too many talented guys in terms of veterans on that Penguins roster to get the job done. So I'm on the same side as you for this one. I'm thinking, because I can't imagine you rooting against your Penguins, and we haven't seen the D zone for the Canes show up much at all besides their win versus the Devils.
Correct. I don't know. I didn't do anything with the side. We're just on over. That's
right.
what I'm hoping happens. So however we get there, ideally a Penguin win. They can't win them all, and you can't always bet on your team. But I would like to think that catching the Hurricanes in the state that they're in right now is good for the Penguins. We'll see. It's always been a very tough place for them to play under this, regime. I can't believe the other night was a lot of fun. The career accomplishments between Sid
Oh, yes.
and Gino and all this stuff happening.
One night.
That was great. That was fun. And I think I got to make sure I don't get caught up in it in like seeing the end before it happens, right? Like you watch them keep guys together in Chicago for a long time, and then it ended up with stuff going very bad. But they ended up with Bedard. But I'm not ready for the Penguins to be in the bottom of the league.
I
I'm
think
not ready.
that last spot in the Metro is still pretty wide open. I mean,
Do
they
you?
have to figure out. Yeah, for the most part. I mean, the Penguins can score. It's just figuring out how to keep the puck out of their net. And we've seen them kind of make these corrections halfway through the season, or before that halfway point, and then grab a wild card spot. So I've learned not to particularly count them out. When you got Sid Crosby the kid, when you got Malkin, when you got all these guys, and I love the Cody Glass acquisition as well. I don't know. I think that they can be sneaky. Capital's got to figure out how to get more scoring going, but they're pretty good when it comes to goaltending. So there's just a few pieces they can keep the Penguins in this one. But right now they're going toe-to-toe, 1-1 in the Canes versus Pittsburgh game. 5:20 left in that first period there, and it was Drew O'Connor that picked up the goal for the Penguins. So it's anybody's game. Just Penguins, help me out in the third period. And Malkin, if you want to get a couple extra shots towards the net, that would be fantastic too. Probably sticking with the hockey theme for a moment because we got a puck drop coming up here for the Sharks and the Jets. Sharks, okay, offensively. They've got a lot of talent. Celebrini's not in. Tyler Toffoli probably having a little bit of a revenge moment against his previous team, because everyone forgets he was with the Red Wings for a moment, and I loved him on the power play there. But what do we potentially like or talking about in this one?
Talking about the line on the side, it's the first couple weeks of the season. Some teams have only played 2, 3, 4 games, maybe 5. How can anybody be minus 410? I saw that this morning and I was like, man, I know the books are looking to get a bet on the dog here, but yikes, I don't know. I mean, how many goals would I have to give you to take the Sharks? If I give you, the goal line's 1.5, the puck line 1.5. Do you want 2.5? Could I interest you in Sharks plus 2.5? The total's only 5.5. How many goals are the Sharks going to score tonight? 1, 2, or none?
I'm hoping for at least one because I would like Tyler Toffoli to grab a point, but A couple of us were surprised that Hellebuck was in the net versus the Sharks. I think that should tell you some things. Like, they grabbed their number one guy, their shutdown guy to go versus the Sharks, who have a few injuries. They're going to be relying on Will Smith and Eklund, William Eklund. So the guys that they're relying on outside of Toffoli and company, it's pretty wild. Like, we're going to see what the rookies have to bring to the table. So I don't know if you could interest me in the 2.5 quite yet.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, early in the season, you see these numbers and you go, okay, at what point do you actually get two-way action? That's all the book's trying to do. At some point, just find the number and get to the dog. And then, there's another game later. It's not quite that high, only because the Avalanche haven't won a game yet. What are they doing? I don't know. Do you take the Avalanche? Do you do the public parlay? I'm sure Wetzel will have something later on this on In-Game Live, where you just put together the two favorites. Is it that easy, Huddy, when you just take Avalanche and Jets and put them together in a moneyline parlay?
I think George did that. We just got a chance to talk with him, and he's like, yeah.
George loves the chalk case. He's not afraid of any price. He's not afraid of any favorite. He should be afraid of the Guardians. Did he give you the Yankees tonight too?
He told me that he's not going to get into that until the game gets started. So I couldn't get him to tell me anything with the Yankees and the Guardians quite yet, which, as I'm learning, there's a lot of pain involved for New York fans. So I'm trying not to dig that any deeper. We got the guys losing their heads over the mess going on right now. I'm really trying to play it cool, okay? And believe it or not. So I didn't want to go there with George quite yet. But yeah, he said he's a parlay guy. He was going to go for it. And I just don't. I've said this for so long, as good as the Colorado was last season even, like, I do not trust their goaltending. Georgiev has not shown me anything that says that he should have taken the last 3 goaltenders' jobs. That's just my personal thing there. So I don't have a winner in this one.
Yeah.
I know that they're going against the Ducks, and that's just pretty wild to say. But also, the Ducks have some playmakers on their roster as well. And if they can't keep their net clean, they being Colorado, then this is going to turn into a bit of a must-see game. Maybe something where a lot of goals kind of pick up there. So it could be a McKinnon game. That's usually the guy who has to be the hero and throw on the cape. Yep. But outside of that, there's a number of guys that actually do like on the Ducks to have a decent game. Not picking up a lot of points, but I keep saying it all night. Leo Carlson, please pick up a goal for your girl, or at least 1 point at plus 112. But Dave, we got more to talk about here on Game Time Decisions. I also got to pick your brain on some college football before that gets rolling tomorrow. And of course, we've got you fully covered here on SportsGrid TV. Make sure you're following at SportsGrid on X. More with Dave and myself on the other side of this quick break.
Sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts them at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else. And they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Game Time Decisions here on SportsGrid TV. Running through the Friday slate, getting into some Saturday college football, and then maybe even touch on more NFL on this Sunday. But guess what? I'm not doing it alone. In case you missed the previous segment, I get to hang with my friend Dave Sherapan, and we were talking about some hockey, which is obviously one of my favorite topics. We're trying to figure out if Colorado can find a W tonight. I mean, I had to feel like I had to take a different angle on this one. I do have McKinnon potentially for 2+ points if it turns into kind of a steamer of a game. But outside of that, I was like, okay, who's somebody who can sneak into the mix here versus a young Ducks team? And Callum Ritchie came to mind. He's sitting at a +360 for a goal. He's played quite well as of late. Really good positioning on the ice, but 5 shots on goal, 4 shots on goal, 0 shots on goal in the previous matchup versus the Bruins. And I think with a guy who can consistently find or lean towards the goal, he's probably due to get close into this matchup as well. So what has you having faith or lack of faith for Colorado?
Well, you said it already. The goaltending is a definite issue, and they trail in these games. And whereas before it was almost like they could just flick that switch and turn it on and then come back or score a quick couple goals. It's just not there yet. So I don't know. I mean, in general, scoring seems to be really up so far in the NHL. So I see the total, and, as an odds maker, there's a real hesitation to go to 7. And when there's 2 teams that score or give up goals, you really can't make it 6. So that's what I like to look at the totals early when I don't have any real feel for the side or I feel like it's really overpriced, which in this case it is because it's a play against the Ducks, but you're playing on a team that hasn't won, it gives up a lot of goals, and has an unstable goaltender situation. So it's a really hard sell on the side. But I think in general, like, we can talk about it as like the kids like to say, I'll call us hockey heads. Scoring is up. I think you really, I like you looking at the shots on goal props. I like you looking at guys to get multiple points because the prices are really good. If you can get a guy to get 1 point, let alone 2, you can get really paid in this game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's cashed in for me a couple of times, but the best one was probably Jordan Kyrou for the Blues to get 2+ points, and that one hit in 2 different games and then just kind of fell apart. But we don't have to get into all of that. Before we switch to college football, though, just to honor my moment with my other hockey head, I have to get an opinion on this. I haven't talked to anyone about it yet, but obviously you have to have those 2 early moments when it comes to the NHL. And heading into this season, you had the Oilers sitting at the top for a Stanley Cup winner, +800. You got the Devils right behind them at 11-1 odds. Colorado at 11-1. But mind you, they posted the other day, no team has started 0-4 and gone on to win the Stanley Cup, let alone play and contend. So that's something to keep in mind there. Dallas Stars right behind them, which have just been, they picked up where they left off last year, and they are always underestimated. They're so talented. I have slight trust issues with Ottinger. I'm just going to throw that out there. I know everybody loves him. He just got paid, but there's moments where he's just like, I don't know. That's a hot topic. Panthers behind them 11-1, and then the New York Rangers 13-1. So where do some people have to drop off here? Because we saw a slow start for the Oilers. We see the Devils made the greatest acquisitions. Okay, I can't say that, but still, Paul Cotter, amazing. Nason, amazing. Like, their pieces have really clicked and started to fit, and they have blended lines that they can go with game in and game out. Colorado looking for their first win. Stars playing up to par, Panthers playing up to par, Rangers playing up to par. That hurt to say a little bit.
You know what's funny about that right there is that, one, you talked about a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference, right? And it's really top heavy as far as odds to win a Stanley Cup with the Eastern Conference teams. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the West. And the team that feels comfortable, that is like that warm, fuzzy blanket, is the Dallas Stars, right? Like, nestle up and you get that big contract for Otter and you know he's going to stop the puck and be there most nights. It's comfortable. It's easy. It makes you feel just right. I didn't hear you say the Lightning. I don't want to start picking on you, but I mean, the Lightning down on that list, what was 5 deep? I see you go into the Devils games now. I know you're up in Jersey. Like, is it happening? Like, is it happening?
There's no conversion happening. I will see the Lightning on Tuesday versus the Devils, and I'm seeing other teams versus the Devils. It's just one of those weird relationships.
Okay.
Trust me. Trust me. But if anybody wants to know where the Tampa Bay Lightning stand, it's 17-1 to lift the cup. And even though I was a little hesitant as to what was going to happen with my own team, last night we saw depth scoring. Last night we saw a comeback win. Last night we saw Ryan McDonough be Ryan McDonough with 4 block shots, and we saw Vasilevsky stand on his head. So I saw all the things that I needed to see to stick with my team. But
Kucherov getting a goal from the end line, like how did that puck even go in late? But I wore the Vegas stuff on the show yesterday with you to kind of jinx them, and I said I like the Lightning, so we got there. So give me a pass on that.
Oh,
give me the college football game you're most looking forward to watching, Case, this weekend.
Georgia versus Texas. It's got to be Georgia versus Texas.
Can't wait.
I'm so hyped for this.
Did you see the line move? This thing opened up out in Vegas about 2.5, 3. All right, because it's Georgia. And you go, can't make Georgia more than a field goal favorite. The line steamed up. There's a 4.5 on that graphic. Out here in the desert, it's 6. They can't get a single bet on the Georgia. It's really strange to me. And Matt and I talked about it on Bostonian versus the book. He's all over Texas. A lot of people are. And that could be the right side. But as the book guy, I'm going, wait, I get Georgia and that defense and Kirby Smart against a top team. I know it's on the road and I know it's at night in Austin. And it's going to be a great game, great atmosphere. I think this game looks like Alabama and Georgia did. Back and forth, high scoring. Over the total. I think Georgia can cover the spread, don't you?
I think they can cover the spread. I like that you compared it to Alabama with the back and forth, because the other thing that I was concerned about is Georgia maybe not coming out hot defensively in the beginning, but rallying after the fact. Yet Texas starts off slow in the first quarter, so keep that in mind, football fans. But we've got more to get to here on Game Time Decisions before we wrap up at the 8 o'clock hour. Get a chance to talk with Dave. Make sure you're following SportsGrid over at SportsGrid. But most importantly, don't go anywhere. We got one more rally on the other side of this quick break.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Final rally here on Game Time Decisions on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson hanging out with Dave Sherapin, talking hockey, talking football, maybe get a few, I don't know, mind pickers when it comes to baseball. But most importantly, we got to stick with the college football topic. But before we dive into that, Dave, 11-6 for the Mets over the Dodgers. So the Mets extend just a smidge, hopefully keeping some hopes alive. And then we know that the Liberty and the Lynx are getting ready to rally for Game 4 coming up here shortly, roughly 6 minutes before the tip-off there. But then circling back to that Georgia versus Texas Longhorns conversation, we were talking about the fact that personally, I think that Texas tends to have a bit of a slower start in the first quarter. They play with their food a little bit. They did it versus Colorado State in week 1. They did it versus a number of teams previously. We saw Ewers kind of get into a slow start and a slow rhythm coming back from injury. But Georgia, I'm concerned because letting Mississippi State put up 31 points on your defense, that was like the definition of not sexy. So I don't really know where to go with this game quite yet, especially because you and Chris were just talking about the total.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think is the biggest concern is this isn't the same Georgia team that I think people are accustomed to, college football fans, bettors. You kind of just assume the best thing about Georgia is always been their defense. And Texas is so good offensively and has so many weapons and are able to run the ball. And like you saw what Bama was able to do. And I don't think Bama's offense is nearly as good as Texas. So it's scary. Sometimes those things hurt. There's a little pain involved sometimes when you make a play. When it doesn't feel great and it's not sexy, sometimes those are the best ones. And I'm telling you, I think Georgia keeps it close. But speaking of Bama Tennessee is an unbelievable football game.
That's where I was going next.
In Tennessee, right? Like, this is what we do. I mean, line mates know where to pass the puck. I don't even have to look. I know where you're going.
You got
right?
the
That's
read.
What I'm saying. This is Bama or nothing, right?
It better be, especially when Tennessee looked to kind of fall apart just a smidge. And I don't know what we're going to see out of Nico. They tried to start relying on the run game a little bit more over there at Tennessee, but I feel like Alabama got like slightly exposed a little bit. You keep Milroe on the perimeter, you take away some of his running lanes, and then they get a bit stagnant. So I feel like it's going to be a good game, but I feel like it's one of those things almost like the Kansas City Chiefs. Talk about that another time, where you can't really bet against Alabama. Yeah, I'm one of the few people that are just never constantly riding the Chiefs, like never.
You really? You like the Niners on Sunday?
No, I'm going to stay away from that one because that just feels like personal drama that those two need to sort out on their own. But outside of that, I just don't. I can't always do this whole Chiefs Kingdom thing. Chiefs all day, Chiefs all the time. So, and plus, I have a chip on my shoulder. I mean, my team beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, so I'm fine. I'm going to live in that moment forever and ever. Amen.
Oh, that was one of the best Super Bowls that I've had personally in a while. Like, we were all over Tampa out here. That was one of those really good ones. So, little soft spot for you for the Tampa. That was good. I like Bama in the game. It will be amazing to me if in the same season Bama loses to two teams from the state of Tennessee. Tennessee and Vanderbilt? Come on. Roll Tide.
Oh, it's as simple as. All right. What are the lines looking like on this one? Have they shifted a lot?
No, it's not. You're actually getting good two-way action. It opened up 1 because Bama's on the road, but it immediately went to 3, and it's been bouncing between 3 and 3.5. 3 at 3.5. 3's not really a key number in college. In the NFL, it's big, but it's not nearly as big in college. So I don't know. Maybe I'll talk to you tomorrow when you're doing all these other shows. I'll be watching a lot of college football. I'll be hanging out, so let me know.
What? I would love that. I always love talking with my friend and other hockey head, Dave Sheridan. But, Dave, I got to let you go because you have a show to do because we're going to be tossing it to you next here on SportsGrid TV. So we'll chat tomorrow. We'll chat on Monday. We got pro football today coming up, so get out of here. You got to go do work as I get ready to clock out. Line change. But as he said, make sure you stick with us here on SportsGrid because you guys are going to be hanging out with the in-game live crew coming up next. And not too many scores to keep you guys updated on. Like I said, the Mets slightly extend 11-6, currently mid of the 8th is what I'm seeing. And then we got an intermission going on for the Hurricanes versus Penguins, sitting 1-1 deadlocked, and we'll see what rallies when it comes down to the Metro. A lot of other games coming up from the 8 o'clock hour and beyond. As for tonight on this Friday, it's going to be a sign-off for me here on Game Time Decisions on SportsGrid TV. I'll remind you yet again, follow at SportsGrid on X. Follow all of the hosts and the talent here so you can keep up with all the good things going on SportsGrid. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow on College Football Today. Time for In-Game Live.